Hi everyone, it's Sam here. This is the second animal that we're learning to draw in the first art class. We have a little parrot here that we're learning to draw. So this is an extension of the first little bluebird that we made, and you can see that he is just a little bit more complicated. So we're doing more than just circles, we're doing circles and jelly beans. But again, our primary focus when drawing birds is using those circles as our main guidelines. So there's a little tip for your first little questionnaire in the virtual classroom. Now, I thought for this lesson, I'll use a different set of pencils just so you can see that all different types of pencils work. So today for the grey lead, I just have these Limograph grey lead pencils. It's actually a very old pencil, and they're ones that I sketch with frequently. You should be able to pick them up in the news agency or any standard art shop. The other coloured pencils that I'm going to be using today came in this really groovy box. I actually got them from the Bendigo Art Gallery. They're double-ended pencils and they're really, really cool. Let's get started. I'll also just confirm before we do actually start that the colours we will be needing is a red or an orange, a black, green, and then we'll need 2 shades darker than this original green here. So 3 variants of the green. And then of course a light grey and a dark grey pencil here. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do is our first circle. So just like in the first lesson, we'll start with doing the cross. Then we'll do the cross on the diagonals like this. And we'll start to join those circles like this. Alrighty, now we're going to do a diagonal line just like this, which is the center of the bird's body. And we're going to draw a circle that is about double the size of this one. So we might go here, here, and I might just make that a little bit taller up there. Alrighty. And again, we're doing those diagonal dots, and then we're joining our dots together. We're using this center line here just as a rough guide for where we should be placing our circle. It should run roughly around the center of that circle. So now we're going to connect the 2 dots together to form the body of the bird. Now remember, we're still doing our basic shapes at the moment, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And another rule of thumb is that we should do it lightly. Now you can see there I did a slight swooping motion with that, and I've curved it down and then up and over. Now the bottom of the bird, he swoops out at roughly around here on the clock. So what's that? That's 3, 4, 5, so 5 o'clock. So from 5 o'clock on the dot, and we're just going to swoop it out, and then we'll go up to the top here, swoop in, and then we're going to continue those lines until they meet. So we're doing nice light feathery lines. Then we're going to grab our eraser and just erase those lines that make it look a bit messy. So remember that we have to, or we should, you don't have to, it's your drawing, you can do whatever you like, but we should aim to clean up our picture as we go. Alrighty, so next we're going to extend part of the body over the base of the circle. So from about here, we are going to do a little bit of a diagonal up like this. So you should, if you did a straight line down there, you'd be able to see a triangle. And then we're going to continue on with that line right around the bird's head to about 3 o'clock on this circle. And then we're going to come in on a diagonal. Next we're going to come out like this, form a little jut out here, and then we're going to swoop this up like that. Okay, so next we just clear up those lines so what I'm saying makes a bit more sense. Okay, Can we see how this is starting to form a really nice beak? Okay, so now we're going to do the under part of the beak, which is kind of like the bottom part of the beak. And that's really simple. We're just going to do a nice little half circle here like this. And then we're just going to do another extra little line just in there. So next we're going to add in where the eye should be. This eye will sit at roughly between 1 and 2 o'clock, so about here. And we're going to draw our eye. And it's in the shape of kind of like an almond. Alrighty, so the next step is we're going to move down to the bottom of the bird here. And what we're actually going to do is create a little bit of a belly for our bird. So we extend out that line a little bit thicker and we gather it into here, into where the neck is. Next, we're going to add the side wing that sits on the other side of the bird. We're roughly going to start it in conjunction to this circle. See that? So from there, see that? That's where this wing starts. And we just sort of swoop out like that, make a little triangle at the bottom, and then we swoop back like this. Great. I think everyone's doing really well. If you got this far, you're doing really well. All right, so now we're just going to do some rough details at the back of the bird to create the back feathers and the tail. We're going to extend out that circle a little bit like this, and we're going to do some little swoopy motions like this. Next, we're going to do a couple of rough lines like this to indicate where the feathers will be. Then it's just a simple case, like the blue wren, and you can make them as long or as short, as wide or as skinny as you like. Next, we're going to add in the bottom part here where the legs are. So again with a parrot, the legs first go back and then they go out like this. So we're creating kind of like a V shape. And what we're doing is just forming the skeleton. Now, this bird is a little bit chunky by nature, just to, add a bit of cuteness. So we're going to do it as if we're doing little clouds down the leg like this. And then we're going to follow along this and go up a little bit, down, like that. And then we're going to do this again. Next, we'll add the next claw in here. Alrighty, so next we're going to start on this side of the leg, and we just go out and then swoop that, and then we will do a little jut out like this, which indicates the back of the claw. So now we're going to do the other leg, and we're going to do, oh, what have I done? Maybe we might not put him on such an angle. Just put him a little bit more like that. So now we're going to do our half moon circle like this. Another one, like so. A triangle up here. And then we're just going to do some little rivets along like that. And the claw. Now we have our basic shapes. We're just going to erase the middle parts of these legs, just so we can get a better understanding of what we're drawing here. So now we have our basic structure. We're going to continue on with this bird and add in some details. First, we'll start with the eye. So with the eye, we're going to add in an additional line that starts thick at the left hand side and gradually comes in to meet the line at the right hand side, like that. Next, we're going to do the same here, a wider line to the left hand side, and it meets the line this time down at the bottom center of the eye. We will start down here with a wider part on the right hand side at the bottom, and that will meet the bottom of the circle. Next, we will draw a little square where the highlight of the eye goes. The highlight of the eye is very important because it adds a sense of life to your picture. Next, we will add in our eyeball and we will shade in the eye. Next, we will add the feathers. So, we'll start by erasing our guidelines so we know what we're looking at. I start by erasing the circle on the head and my indicators on the clock, which help me where my intersecting lines go. I also erase this lower line here on the bird's belly. I erase the horizontal line that indicates where the wing behind the bird starts. I erase the line that goes through the middle of the large circle. Let's get started with more details. First, I'm going to use this main circle here as a guideline for where I'm going to put my feathers. I start by adding a triangle here, and that creates the first feather. Then I do a curved triangle and then flick up like so to create the next feather. And I continue in this fashion, and I try and keep a very loose hand because I want the strokes to be light, like feathers, light and feathery, so we can have a natural feel to our feathers. Next, when I come down to this part of the circle, I'm going to go back a little bit like this. Now I'm going to erase the original guideline where the circle was. It's okay if I erase some of the feathers because I can go over them. I'd rather make sure that I have gotten rid of any of those unnecessary guidelines that might show through on the final picture. Next, I do some under feather plumage, which is about there. I just guide it out like that. It's kind of like a triangle. Then I start to just create some feathers that face down this way. Next, I start doing the feathers here that are the back feathers. Next, I just add some rough lines like this to give the indication of feathers. And as I go, I just erase the lines that don't make sense. You might not get it perfect on the first go. It's important to keep a light touch so we can keep erasing what doesn't make sense. Next, I add a few little areas where I think the red will go. Parrots typically have some red parts on their wings, so that's where I've just made sure that I've got them. So this part of the wing here is the inside of this wing, and this part here is the under part of this wing. So these two areas are roughly the same. Alrighty, next I'll add some feathers just randomly around the bird, and sometimes they're just a rough little line just to indicate furriness. If you really want to go for gold, you can add more feathers, along here like this. Like so. Now I'll just clear up some of these back wings, these back feathers down here, just to make them a bit more cleaner. I'll also just add those curved bits in there and make the bottom of that leg a little bit slimmer. And then I'll erase the lines that don't make sense. I do one quick tidy up around the picture before I add colour. This is to make sure that when I apply the colour, I have as little grey lead showing through the colour as possible. I've only added the smallest amount of feathers possible. You can add more feathers if you like, or you can add less feathers. It's really up to you. I like to play around with some of the features once I've got all of my bird done, just to adjust it to the way that I want it. I'm pretty happy with it now. So now we're going to go ahead and start colouring in our bird. These are the ones that I found. So because I don't use these pencils very often, I'll do myself a little colour chart over here as a reference. And also that just helps me get an idea of how these coloured pencils will blend on the page. I'll just double check that's a black. It's a brown. These are funny pencils. Okay, I'm going to start much like the blue wren with the lightest green first. And I will fix that up there. I will colour the entire bird in green, in the light green. I like to hold the pencil at a 45-degree angle because it has a broader coverage, and it will also reduce the amount of lines that you can see when you're colouring. Another tip when using coloured pencils is to use small circular motions instead of broad strokes, particularly when you're covering large areas. This will help you have an even coverage of colour and reduce the amount of lines that you can see. I make sure to look back at my tutorial page to make sure I'm not colouring over any of the red areas. Now on the video it does look quite dull, but in real life this green is actually quite bright. A good thing to note about these types of pencils, if you ever come across them, is that I'm finding that they don't move around the grey lead. So I can colour freely over the grey lead without smudging. So I've covered my entire bird where all the green areas are in the lightest shade. Next I move on to the next shade of green, which will be this one. I colour in the underside of the bird with this green. I want to create a sense of a shadow for this bird to make it look a bit more interesting than just a flat cartoon. I continue this under shade colouring in up the neck, and I also colour in just around under where that circle was in the initial drawing, like so, to make it look like the bird has cheeks. Okay, the next part of shading will be slightly at the top of this wing and down the bottom of the wing. The more times I go over these shaded areas, the more present the colour will be. Each time I go over with another layer, I gradually make the pencil more pointy on the page, and I apply a little bit more pressure. Next, I do the underside of this wing because the wing is curving over. This time I'm paying more attention to the feathers that I have drawn. And I will go on to the next layer of feathers here. I'm using quite a bit of pressure at this stage. I'm starting to curve my shading up like this, so it's like this is the direction of the shading. Alrighty, next I'm going to shade 3/4 of this tail like so. I'm also going to shade the under part here, just about halfway up. I'm also going to shade the underside of his legs, just down to here like this. I actually think I forgot to shade in his legs. Next, I'm going to grab the darker shade of green. I don't think I really like this shade of green, to be honest. And I might switch it out. So as the more layers I create, I sharpen my pencils more because I want to really get into the paper. So that lid's just come out. So that's fine because what I can also do is blend in a dark blue into my green, which will create a darker green. I'll just test it there, yep. So I will blend a blue in with the green to make a darker green. This is a great thing to learn, is how to blend colours to make alternate shades, especially if you have a limited amount of pencils. I personally do this all the time. Now I'll just colour in some more blue down at the base of these feathers here. And I might just highlight some of these feathers here with that blue. I'll always also go to the underside of this feather like this. So now I'll also shade half of that green area under here in blue, or the darkest shade green that you have. I will also do the same with the legs, shading half of that area of green blue. Next, I'll go in with this light green again and go over the entire body of the parrot. I'm also increasing the pressure to get a better coverage of the colour. Making sure to blend in that green with the other areas of green that we've been doing. Alright, I'm going to go down onto the legs and finish that light green area, making sure to blend it in with the darker shades. I'm going to go back over with that mid-tone of green into the middle areas, just to make sure that we've covered all the areas of the parrot. I'll also go over the blue. Because I've blended with the blue, when I go over with the green, it'll actually make those areas of the parrot darker and more green. I think I've missed a bit of a green spot over here. A light green spot, so I'll just go back over it. He's really coming along quite nicely. Now, if you like, you can keep going over those areas with blue, the dark areas, and you can build up these dark shaded areas as dark as you like. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I think that's as far as we'll go. One last thing, if you want to make the light green areas look a little bit more luminous, you can add a touch of yellow. I like to keep the yellow just for the very light green areas. I'm using quite a lot of pressure now. Now we're going to carry on with the red areas of the parrot. I don't have two tones of red, so I'm using a red and an orange. I start off with orange because orange is a lighter shade of red. I colour in the entire area that is allocated for red feathers, and I colour it in the orange colour. Like so. I also colour in the beak. However, I use a lighter colour orange around the rim of the beak first. Then I go in with my orange that I was using in the feathers, and I blend the two together. Next, I grab my darker red colour. I'll just test it over here first. Yep, I'm happy with it. Now I colour in the centre of the beak, the darker colour, like this. I then do some swooping shades like this, just so my shading runs in line with the beak, making sure to keep those exterior parts the original light orange. I then go back to my light orange with a little bit more pressure and go around those outside areas. Next, I grab that dark red colour and I add a bit of red to the bottom part of the feathers. For the final colours, I use a dark blue in the bottom part of this beak. All of these colours are fairly light, so if I want to make it darker, I can add a red over the blue and then add the blue again, and it should make it a fairly dark blue. Or if you already have a dark blue. Next, I grab my black pencil and I go in the inner part here, in that little triangle that we made. I also go over the eye in black, making sure not to colour out the white area. If you like, you can outline your whole picture like this. I'll just do the beak for now. Okay, next, the back of this back wing is black. You can see I like to focus on one color at a time. I like to take my time with the art process. It's important to relax when drawing and enjoy the hobby itself rather than focusing on worrying about the end product. Next, let's move on to the feet. I've made the feet grey in your tutorial, so I only have one shade of grey, which is fine. So I just colour in the feet, or the claws, like this. You can see that grey is fairly light, so I'm going to go in with black on the bottom half of these claws, like this, just to make it look like it's slightly shadowed. And again, I do the same for the back claw. I'm also going to go over the claws like this with the black outline. I've chosen to do the nails of the claws in blue, but you can do them in whatever color you like. I just thought it would make it a little bit more interesting. I might scoot back in with that grey. I'm starting to be really happy with the way this parrot's turned out. I'm going to go around the outside of the green areas of the parrot with this dark green. You can do the whole parrot in an outline of black, or you can choose to outline the different areas according to the color that you've made them. I'm going over all the feather lines with this dark green, and I'm pressing quite heavily. So there we have it, guys, a cute little parrot. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. And that completes our first week of lessons. Make sure to check into the portal because I've also added in a weekly famous artist that you can read up about. I think it's really interesting to get to know what other art styles are out there. Bye for now and have a lovely day.